So this is our fourth video. And the previous videos were an introduction to you and your experiences. And then we moved into talking about avoiding and the value for avoiding. And for me, that was a really interesting conversation to have with you, where you made it, for me, very clear about the value for avoiding. And in the beginning of recovery, the value for avoiding is survival, is sobriety. And over time, what occurs, again, this is in our third video, looking at the notes, is we explode. If your life revolves around avoiding, always avoiding, what's left is exploding. And in that video, which was 3, you talked about how exploding was the migraines.
Yeah.
So it was avoid, 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 explode, because there wasn't the escape through drugs and alcohol, for example. The explosion came through migraines. And so in today's video, we're developing that by talking about the beginning of recovery versus the post-crisis period. Well, talk to us more about that.
Yeah, so I think, that pressure built up, and then boom. We all have different expressions of what fucking happens. Mine was migraines. Someone might be in violence or, avoidance, but it's all very there. And I think those videos do it justice. And I really encourage, again, if you're watching, this is your first one, I got nothing for you, dude. You might need to talk to somebody else because you're a fucking weirdo. Which actually, we specialize in weirdos, as we are weirdos, so maybe you're in the right place.
Great.
So yeah, this transition from I'm all fucked up. I'm stuck in this perpetual addiction, and then I make the decision to get sober. I've started coining this as chapter 1. Right? This idea of chapter 1 being, it starts when I make a conscious effort to get sober. And for me, it took about 4 more months after the decision to actually really be sober and not use anymore. And that happens for a lot of us in recovery. And people outside of recovery don't realize this, but it isn't a choice that we make and just do. Addiction is a process. Recovery is a process. And so for a lot of people, myself included, the choice to get sober and to be actually sober is about 4 months in there. And so after those 4 months, I really started to be able to learn and live and to work on myself as a recovered person. I didn't do the 12 steps, but I know many people who have, and this is where the 12 steps fucking shines. This is the moment where avoidance is still necessary. You still need to avoid people, places, things, thoughts, feelings, actions. And now you're being introduced, if you are in the 12 steps, you're being introduced to a community, to sober people, to sober thinking, to sober living. And it's great. It really is such a necessity. And then the end of chapter 1 for me is when there's a calm chaos. Your life isn't perfect yet, but you are you're no longer in immediate threat of a relapse. You're no longer living by the seam of your pants, where another great way to put it is where avoidance can stop. It can stop. But there's nothing telling us to stop avoiding. Nothing told me to stop avoiding. So even though my chapter 1 was ending,
right,
I had no idea of what this idea of a chapter 2 would include besides avoiding. And so my chapter 2 was a very good continuation of chapter 1 of avoiding, but this time I wasn't just avoiding people, places, things that were drug related. I was avoiding people, places, things, thoughts, feelings, actions of every ilk, of chance, of people, of communication, of community, of love, of honesty, all of these things, because in that mindset, I'm stuck in everything that is a risk to me is bad, and I need to avoid it. So a relationship is bad,
right,
because they could hurt me. Going out for a job that I really want is bad because I could fail and I could get hurt.
right.
So eventually, even in this chapter 2, where you're no longer in this immediate danger, I was in a perpetual state of isolation. I was depressed. I felt dead. All the things we talked about in the last video was all the migraines. That's a part of my chapter 2, because I was still avoiding. That's all I knew, and that's all addicts know. We're not taught or shown another way. Whether it's through the 12 steps, you're still going to these meetings, which is great. You still have a community, but it's as if you hit a wall, and instead of someone saying there's something on the other side of this wall,
Right.
or even that this is the end, someone just says, okay, that's the wall supposed to be there. Accept it. Avoid thinking about going over, around, through. You're at a wall. That's life now.
But what that means is, I think what you're saying is that's depression or anxiety. So the wall is I'm sober and depressed, or I'm sober and anxious, or I'm sober and unable to build a successful relationship. Is that what you're saying when you say the wall?
That, and also that there's no more progress. There's nothing now to go.
Well,
this is your life now.
I don't understand. What do you mean? There's nothing more to go.
So you were sober.
Yeah.
You are, a year, 2 years, 3 years sober, 7 years sober, and this is just your life now.
When you say just your life, you mean
avoiding depression. So all those things that you just talked about, the wall could represent the avoidance, depression, suicidal thoughts, other types of addictions. That's what life is. So for me,
that's it. Because you're an addict, this is it. This is the best you can hope for. Is that what you're saying?
That is exactly what I'm saying. Yes.
Okay. Well, that sucks, and that's stupid, and fuck that. And I appreciate you clarifying that for me.
Yeah. And that is how many people watching right now, you guys feel, right? We feel that way because like we've talked about in the past couple of videos, you can't see what you can't see. You don't. So if you're at a wall and you have a blinder on, so you can't see above it, you can't see around it. It's not that there's something else. It's that, okay, this is where I live now.
All there is.
This is all there is. And so
then you have everyone telling you that's all there is. The community you're operating in also doesn't know that there's more beyond the wall.
And because they weren't told, and this perpetuates that same cycle of you are at 12 steps, you are at SMART or whatever it is, you can build in this space, but only in this space, because there isn't a knowledge of another space. And then the idea of you're not doing it right is told multiple times. Being told that you're miserable because you're not doing the steps right. You're miserable because you're not doing sober right. Or whatever this mentality is brought to us, because I was told that I would never get sober without 12 steps. I proved that wrong. And then when I was miserable, I was like, wow, what am I supposed to do? And people said, because you're doing it wrong. You're doing sober wrong. And so you feel like, wow, I'm so fucked up. I can't even be 7 years sober right. Because it's not that I've made no choice to move forward. There is no forward. There is just what life is shit there. And that's it. Because again, I couldn't see what I couldn't see. I couldn't see what no one knew was there that I was associated with. Mm-hmm. And so it's literally, if you block that side of your mind off, look at Columbus, which obviously that's not real anymore. We know it's a story, but the idea be pre-Galileo, the world is round ideas. There was no after this. At the end of that horizon, the world fell off.
Okay.
And so no one's going to say like, you're just choosing to be here and not over there, because there is no over there.
Right. So
no one's going to encourage you to search anymore.
Right.
They're just going to look at you and say that you're wrong.
Sure.
And you're going to feel it.
Yeah. Well, if they didn't say that, then they'd have to look at themselves.
Exactly. They have to say, well, maybe I'm wrong.
Or there might be more.
Yeah. And that's not what humans usually don't like that.
Right.
I sure as
Yeah.
hell did not.
Right. The ego won't accept the possibility that there's something beyond itself.
Yeah, it can't survive.
Yeah, I get it. Okay, so you're in chapter 1, you've transitioned to chapter 2, and chapter 2 is, I think you described it to me before as where I begin to create my life again. So you're getting a job, you're beginning to take care of yourself. And what I was hearing is that while you were in chapter 2 and going after creating your life after being sober, that you have the job, but you're dead. You have the job, but you're, et cetera. You're still avoiding. So what do you want us to get about what's possible with regard to chapter 2?
In the state of sobriety, in the state of recovery, as is sans TMD, without this other thing, chapter 2 is the end. Chapter 2 is the last chapter of a story, and that's a fucking shitty story. Children's books only have 2 chapters, not a real book. So if we're stuck in this cycle, in a sick, broken cycle that we see now as recovery, then chapter 2 is it.
I understand.
It's fucking sad.
It is. Yeah, it is. I get that. I hear what you're saying now about, the wall and you can't sail past that horizon. I get it. Those are great. For me, those are great examples.
Good. Yeah. I think the most important part now is the realization of something else.
Agreed.
And it just like the idea of flat Earth, the idea of something else was shunned. It's like, no, don't you dare try to go there.
Right. So bring us into chapter 3, right? Bring us into more.
Exactly. Yes. So chapter fucking 3, right? Chapter 3 only exists if there's more. If you're being told there's no more, there's no chapter 3.
Right.
TMD was my more.
Got it.
I resisted more as I'm a human who's scared of change and scared of, someone tells me there's something beyond the abyss. It's like, you're fucking crazy. No, there isn't. I know chapter 2 is safe. I'm sober here. Safe. I'm sober. Might be miserable. I might hate my life. I might want to, drive my car into a fucking bridge embankment every day on my way to work, but I'm not using.
Right.
So don't fucking tell me there's more. I don't want more. I've only known this.
Okay.
Don't make me leave my fucking bubble.
Okay.
And TMD is the fucking pin that pops that bubble.
Yeah.
Yet the addict myself still had a choice. I reflated that bubble a few times. And so that, TMD is the gateway to a chapter 3. It's funny because it's here. It's not like it's been, some secret society since the, dawn of man. It's so you're sitting at the wall, you've built a house and you've built up, all this shit. And then you look over, you're like, is that a door? Did you guys see that door before? And it was like, no. Like, does that say TMD? What the fuck is this? Has that been there the whole time? And it has. It's just no one could see it. And that's another frustrating part is, you feel like you've been lied to or you failed, but in reality, of course you didn't see it. You were avoiding. I was avoiding. I couldn't see it. I was avoiding it. But now that I was lucky enough to have someone in my life that cared about me enough to challenge me and have me, have you reach out to me and show me that there is a possibility for a chapter 3 and beyond.
Right. So what is chapter 3? What occurred for you as you transition into chapter 3. Really, I'd like for you to bring to life chapter 3. Let's riff on that.
All right. So yeah, the beginning of chapter 3 starts off with fuck. This is the word fuck. And fuck is a very versatile word. Fuck means 7 different things in one sentence. And so in that moment, it meant fuck. I'm scared. Fuck. Why haven't I done this before? Fuck, this is exciting. Fuck, I'm going back. All these fucking fucks.
Sure.
That's the beginning of chapter 3.
Oh, that's great.
Fuck.
That's great.
And as you start this journey into TMD and being, the intro class, all these things, you really start understanding that, testing that ego, testing that firm belief some of us have, especially for people in 12 steps who 12 steps saved their lives. And being told and learning that 12 steps is the only way, and then starting chapter 3 and someone saying, no, it's a good way, we're going to build on it and further, but it's not the only way now.
Right.
Is you're challenging someone's core. And that is uncomfortable. It was very hard.
Oh, we talked about the transition from, maybe we didn't talk about it in the video. We talked about the transition from avoiding to feeling.
Mm-hmm.
That's what you're talking about. That's chapter 3, right? It's when you start to move out of avoiding and into feeling, noticing, seeing, sharing,
and really
exploring,
truly noticing and seeing in real authenticity, which again, we only know the words in chapter 2.
Right. So, but chapter 2 is, or chapter 1 is structure and steps and do this, do that. You're directly told what to do.
Yes. Yeah.
And then as you transition into chapter 3, there is no direction. There is no thing to latch onto. There is no good behavior, bad behavior. The person's left, right? I mean, as they experience the curriculum, you're confronted by the way the mechanism, the way your brain's programmed to operate.
Yeah.
Which means as you're confronted, what this means is you're brought to see versus change. And there is no directive for what to do. Right. Yeah. So it's like you start to notice that you're programmed to be disconnected or to avoid an emotional experience. Well, what do I do now? But there is no direction. There is no, and so this is the experience that one comes out of chapter 2 into chapter 3. Yeah.
And that is something so foreign to us. And that, like you said, I guarantee you, and I had this reaction in my head at the beginning and now, someone says, you see it, okay, great, change it, right? That's the logical next step, right? Now tell me what to do to not do this.
Right.
And that has literally led to repeating chapter 2 for fucking 30 years in misery.
Right.
And so now giving this second viewpoint of saying, no, don't change, don't do this, observe. There's no directive now. You have a choice.
What you're left with is yourself. You're left with, how do I go about creating my life? How do I go about one of the things that occurs as you transition into chapter 3, choosing to participate in TMD, is you're left noticing your need for somebody else to tell you what to do, or you're left noticing that you don't trust yourself. So the person who's entering into chapter 3 comes to see that they don't trust themselves. And the person enters into chapter 3, begins to notice that they are blind and cannot see themselves and the way they're programmed to operate. And so you have these two, powerful programmatic barriers to performance. One being, I don't trust myself. and two, an inability to have self-awareness, an inability to see. And these two constructs over and over and over again sabotage the person's ability to create their lives. So from I don't trust myself and with a lack of self-awareness, the only thing that can help me is if I do what I'm told to do.
Yeah.
Because I don't trust myself to choose. I don't trust myself to design something and go into the world to create it. And so when you enter into TMD and there's no directive, what do you immediately come up against? Well, I don't trust myself and I can't see shit.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's painful.
Yeah.
We're here with Paul. We're talking about transitioning from chapter 1, chapter 2 to chapter 3. In chapter 1, what we're exploring is sobriety. What is it to be sober? And inside of chapter 1, some of the values that keep us sober are avoiding. And as we transition into chapter 2, we're still avoiding, but we're sober long enough to the extent that we can begin to create our lives, create a relationship or create a job or self-care. This is where we begin to take care of ourselves. And what Paul is sharing with us today is his experience of inventing or creating chapter 3, which existed out of transitioning into TMD. And out of your participation in TMD, you began to experience a breakthrough in avoiding. And that's really what led us to create this video series, is you brought to me the understanding of the value of avoiding in chapter 1 and the consequence of avoiding in chapter 2. And what's it like for you to begin to transition out of avoiding and into consciously creating your life. And so now you and I are left dialoguing in this video about this experience of chapter 3, right? Where you're transitioning out of avoiding into creating your life. And it's kind of nebulous. It's kind of difficult. It's kind of like, how do you begin to describe it?
And I think one thing that, really is very pertinent for most people, if they are willing to take that initial step to a chapter 3, to TMD, we've done everything else. Everything that we were shown, we've done. We've tried.
And you're depressed and you're anxious and you're not fulfilled in life, right? You've done everything you're supposed to do. And so if you notice being sober and dead, then there's more. So the seminar begins with an intro class and then transitioning into basic training. You're sober for a year or more, and you're looking for more in your life, right? And you come into the intro class. And the first thing you begin to experience is that there's a lack of structure. And that lack of structure or lack of answers or lack of direction becomes really triggering for people.
Yeah.
And that trigger is what we were just talking about a minute ago. Like, why is a person upset by that there's a lack of structure? Well, because they don't trust themselves.
Yeah. Right. It's all we've known.
Is I don't trust myself.
I don't trust myself, and I need someone to do this for me. I need someone to tell me what to do. And so being in a place where that's not happening and someone isn't giving me a fucking answer, it's, well, fuck this. Like, I need to fucking go.
Yeah, and that's painful. That's upsetting. That's painful. That's scary. That's right. So now you're participating on this call where there's no answer, there's no structure, and you're upset and you're frustrated.
Yeah.
This is the beginning. This is the beginning of the work, right? So do you want to confront yourself? Are you interested in exploring the limitations of yourself in a way that we're not looking for an answer? We're not looking to write it down on a piece of paper. We're looking to have the feelings.
Experience.
Are you willing to engage in these experiences? This is the beginning of the work, right? You've had these experiences. I mean, you've walked through this fire.
Yeah. And still am faced with some of those resistant feelings, but just like anything else, we're all scientists. Every human is a scientist. We experiment with things. We have proof. We have falsifying evidence. And even with evidence, I still can be resistant. But now being able to sit in this feeling of that nebulous, of that there is no one telling me what to do, my capacity for fear, for anxiety
Ah,
is so great now because honestly, it was a lack of fucking, or better way to say it is starting this, training out was I was so burnt out from everything else that, and similar to what Ozzy was speaking on, was I just I have to do something different, and this is fucking different.
yeah,
I've never seen this before, so I'm not as much as I want to run. I owe it to myself at least to fucking stay, and that choice is that first choice. I truly believe that is made in the active course of TMD is that fuck it, I'll fuck it, I'll see what happens. And that's the first time you are really challenged to trust yourself
yeah,
and not run and
yeah,
not do what has worked before, right? You are really at this end of the road of I've done all this stuff. I'm still depressed. I'm still anxious. I'm still mad. And now I'm faced with something that's scary, that is challenging what I thought was my core.
right.
And my initial reaction to run, well, fuck it. Like if I run, I'm just gonna go back. So let me just fucking see what this asshole has to say.
Right.
Uh, and then that's an experience, right? You're no longer sitting in a fucking lab in a test tube, fucking doing armchair detective work. You're in the fucking shit now, right? And that's the biggest difference, I think, for and Ozzy and I talked about this the other day, and other graduates have shared this with me, is that all these other things, and you Pete, you and I have talked about this idea of therapy, right? You're in a room, you're talking, it's good, it's got a lot of benefits, fantastic, whatever. And yes, you have some experiences in 12 steps and smart where you're engaging on some levels, but you're also doing a lot of it in a meeting room where TMD is now, you are living it. You don't get to just sit back and let things happen. You are engaged, you're experiencing this shit on a level that is real. And this is not known before. Being real and having real authentic experiences were just kind of fun words that we used to describe what we thought were fun, real experiences before. Whereas now, being in the work, being in TMD, you are living and having these real experiences that are authentic, that are scary, and they're real because you want to run, but you don't. You want to push people away, and sometimes you do, but you confront it. All these things that we've done and survived for years, we are no longer doing. And instead of having to wait for someone to tell us not to do it, it's literally observing, sitting in it, and building that capacity to say, all right, now I can trust myself a bit. And that just builds. That's chapter fucking 3 is learning to trust yourself and learning to really what observing is, and not having to change, not having to listen to other people give you strict directions, but being able to sit through something and build that capacity. I guess you could name chapter 3 building capacity.
Yeah, self-awareness and blindness. I see chapter 3 as what we're describing now is the person's likely experience of transitioning from chapter 1 into chapter 3,
Yeah.
which is being described as somewhat painful and uncomfortable.
Yeah.
The person is confronted by their inability to trust themselves and their lack of self-awareness. And so as you described earlier, you're looking at that wall where there are no other opportunities, and you begin to experience that you're looking at the wall, and you begin to experience no other possibilities. And that's painful. And then you begin to experience your inability to trust yourself and your inability to have a self-awareness, the type of self-awareness that drives breakthrough performance. And again, that's painful and uncomfortable. And as the person sits in that experience, they begin to build an emotional capacity that actually empowers them to trust themselves And that empowers them to begin to have self-awareness. And all of a sudden, as graduates have described, is the wall disappears and you begin to see this vast opening for action, and you're left inspired. And if I can bring you forward into the training, what's next is, how do I go about creating my life now that I've accessed this vast opening for action? And if the person doesn't move into learning how to create their life now, they will move directly back to that wall with no possibility.
The falsehood of safety.
Yeah, you've got a language for something, you had an experience you had last week, last month, 6 years ago, that no longer correlates to the type of risk and freedom that the person directly experiences after having that breakthrough.
Yeah.
You can see it, right? You look at the people now in the intro class, they're so triggered by being trapped. And I've become the person who's wrong and bad. They're not willing to look at or take responsibility for being blind and having a lack of self-awareness. So the person's left stuck, angry. What we're describing is, if you could stay intentional with regard to participation, that through your participation, what opens up is this experience, this awesome experience that you've had, that others have had.
Yeah. And it's funny, it's what, November 19th. And so we're currently, as we film this, we are in another intro course, and I'm very eager to see the people right now who are seeing you as an enemy, seeing the work as some weird, some bullshit that's trying to take what they've known and say it's wrong or right, or what is wrong or right, and why aren't you giving me a fucking answer? And now to look back at this video as after a couple weeks or months or whatever it is, and to see what they couldn't see, and see that they couldn't see. I mean, that's the beauty of what we're doing here.
Yeah.
Is as Pete and I are doing this, these videos, we're still doing the work, we're still living it, we're still doing the courses. I'm still, I'll be starting the advanced course in a couple of weeks, which, I mean, that's going to be again, for me to look back at this video is going to be fucking awesome, right? It's going to be, I'm going to see things that I don't see right now. And that's a guarantee because I've lived it. I'm seeing it every day. And I'm not waiting for someone to tell me what to do with it, because I'm trusting myself again. Or not again. There was never really a known life of trust in myself. And so all of this is, some people would see it as scary and can if they choose to, but look at the fucking opportunity I have and I'm living to create. It's like alchemy, right? You are creating gold and fucking diamonds and pure metals from dirt and, like, fucking bat blood or whatever alchemists used to think was happening. But
Definitely
to
bad.
create a life from nothing, that's beautiful.
If you look at what's happening now in the intro class, this is your second time observing an intro class.
Yes.
You have a new relationship to it now versus the first time that you observed.
Oh yeah.
The first time you observed it. The
Yes.
second time observing, you have a new relationship to observing than the first time observing. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, without a doubt, even more so than just the regular idea of, like you said, the memory's not a memory, it's a memory of the last time you had the memory. It's, building off of that. I mean, my observing is not just the people there and really being kind of lost in that, but observing the people who were in the first one and experiencing things through them and seeing how the resistance is so ingrained and not just this ignorance, right? It felt, or it actually is ignorance. Ignorance is just the lack of knowledge.
Right.
And so this ignorance for what we're trying to convey is now being no you know, this belief that it's not ignorance, it's reality. Like it's my reality.
Right.
And this digging in the heels is really, you
Fighting
know,
for limitations.
dude. I
It's like
mean,
you have
and
a group of people fighting for their disease or fighting for the limitations, while you and I are taking an unreasonable stand for them to access something extraordinary. Yeah, that's what the intro class is. That's what the basic training is. People come to grips with what they're fighting for, and begin to fight for their transformation versus fighting for their programmatic reactivity. So
yeah,
in
that's
today's
a great word.
video, right? Yeah. In today's video, what we're talking about is transitioning out of avoiding and into creating our lives, which means we're walking through the door of I don't trust myself, and the door of there's nothing other than what I have or lack of self-awareness. You begin to confront I don't trust myself. You begin to confront your lack of self-awareness. And what arises out of that is you begin to trust yourself. You begin to see what you haven't seen before. And a new world, you could say, a new realm of possibility opens up for the person. And it feels a lot like aliveness. Like one of Paul's favorite expressions that I use is you are lit on possibility.
I mean, I feel like, you know, I relate to this generation and I'm on fleek. I'm on flack. You know, I'm on flick and flack. You know, I'm not a veterinarian, so I don't have a bunny with a hip and a hop, but I do hip and a hop. I'm lit.
He's lit, people. We're all lit. You're lit on possibility. You're inspired by what you can create in your life. But that inspiration exists as a result of like moving into and then through all these barriers that you don't even know you put up. And so it's difficult, like maybe impossible to describe the experience, but the promise is for those of you who are willing to take the challenge on is you will break through. It's unequivocal. You absolutely will break through your limitations, but you're going to have to go through whatever you have to go through to do that. Boredom, anger, resentment, shame, pain, guilt, my handsomeness, whatever it is, you got to work through it. Is there anything you want to say to clean up today's video?
Yeah, I think going off of what you had just said, right? The idea of, you know, there's no real way of selling this to someone, right? There's no real way of explaining how this works perfectly. So what's great about me sharing and other people in this work sharing their stories and them is the idea of I align with this person. You know, if I'm somebody watching these videos who is not in the work, I see myself in Paul or I see myself in Shirley, and she got this.
Right.
So fuck, you know, I don't know what the fuck they're talking about because it's all fucking Latin to me. But fuck, if Shirley and I are so similar and she's getting it,
Then
and
I can get it.
I can get it. I'm so tired of being in this place, but maybe, and that's the beauty of this work and the community. You know, I really always want to stress the community aspect to people
Yeah.
and the
Yeah.
beauty of that connection. So, you know, I think, you know, I'm very, you know, I feel good with this video, and I really hope that you guys continue watching these videos, but reaching out to us again. I can't stress enough. Reach out to me. Reach out to Pete. You know,
Yeah.
we're
Reach out to
here.
Paul. Paul's got so much to share. Paul, look, I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be generating this without you. I can't stress that enough. I mean, I have an experience of TMD. I've led the curriculum for over 20 years. I'm 26 right now. However,
Very good.
you
Very good.
you what you bring to the table is something extraordinary. You bring experience of recovery, and you bring an experience of breaking through the creation of migraines, and so I'm grateful. You know, thank you very much for the opportunity to be here, to have this interaction with you, and to bring to the world what's truly possible for people who are sober and looking for more.
Yes, thank you. On that same note, thank you for giving my community, the people I've outlined with for a long time, hope again. The idea of coming to that wall has led to people taking their own lives, relapsing. It's destitute, it's lonely, it's death. And to have some semblance of a door, of a next step that hasn't been there for any of us is what you're introducing to this, to my community, and what TMD is introducing to my community. And as an ambassador of recovery and the community in TMD now, is thank you for giving us a chance, giving us something that means a chapter 3, not just an end in chapter 2. So thank you.
You got it. I got it. Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you. Yeah, you're welcome. Goodbye, everyone.